Hey traders, welcome to the market internal review for August 2nd, 2023. Going to kind of blast through this one today. I covered most of this on Twitter, or X now, I guess it's called, thanks to Elon Musk. But yeah, so quite the interesting day. Massive gap down here. So we started with a $3.20 gap here on SPY, as signified by the gap zones, well out of the range of previous day's session TiWAP. So all the price here, it makes up the standard deviation bands. You can see it's real tight and squeezed compared to the rest of the more normal days that we've been seeing where we have a trending move. So very tight. It's going to be pretty common in my observations here recently while using TiWAP that the days where we have a tight range and flat, such as this, the next day seems as though the probability to retrace back into those bands are quite low. The probabilities being so low because that range was established under very tight conditions. I do imagine that the TiWAP price from this day will eventually be like a magnet for support and or resistance. So definitely still value there. But overall, I did not expect to see a retracement back into this area, especially where when we rejected this daily gap zone low price here of about 453 and change 24. So you can see we had this wick right here. On the open, we had, gosh, I'm pretty sure it was around 2,000 stocks down. Let's go just look at ad real quick. I'd rather not guess. All right. So at open, we had 1,940 some stocks in decline. And looking at that, seeing this massive gap down, two things immediately came in my mind. Potential for a trending day short. And what are we going to do with this gap? The gap is massive for SPY. So I guess the third thing I had in my head was perhaps we were not going to trend down too much farther if we could not retrace back in here. So we opened up with some extreme bearish tick and average closures jerked below zero. So I called out on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, around 10:15 that the probability for a trending day mostly established for the short side, given the resistance this daily gap zone had been showing. Now, we still had somewhat of a tight band by about 10:10-ish, though. We started to have it, TiWAPs curling down, and the bands are, after a squeeze, are starting to expand at a pretty rapid pace. We actually have per the TiWAP strat, if you haven't seen the video, definitely go check it out, but we have our official breakdown and retest. I like to see it close back in that first deviation and another close engulfing back out, either to the up or down. That, for me, when a trending day is more probable, is a very excellent setup for a trade. I use the TiWAP as my trending stop loss. So you can see once you enter this trade, if you follow this strategy, you could have held this trade all day. Now, that being said, I was using on my other layout here, and I did post these as well today, the previous weekly TiWAP ending standard deviation prices I have found to be incredibly effective for support resistance, whatever you want to call them, supply demand. They're, for whatever reason, they are prices that the market reacts to. So I was all out by the time we hit 450. We had this retracement, so there was a potential at some point for some kind of retracement back up in, and I'll show a little bit of why that is. But all of these extreme bearish closures, that's a good move. Time to heavily trim, manage your risk, potentially even at full exit, which I did. A big part of that is the gap down. $3.50 gap down. What more could you ask for if you catch this kind of move here? Now, you can see we landed right on this 455.6 a handful of times. We did break through, and then afterwards, we're waffling around here. We did make a new low right under 450. Let's see, 449.5 is basically where we stopped. I was a little bit more confident around this area that perhaps we would break above TWAP and start to retrace, but that didn't happen. So one thing you'll notice though at 11:20 is when trend balance entered the scene, reared its ugly head. We did start to print some bullish tick, and we can see the average closures basically up, down, up, back down, little peak up, and then we did have some more extreme bearish tick here at the end of the day, but then look what happens, right back up. So perfect representation of trend balance here by this MIT indicator, and this is exactly kind of what we would expect. So the whole move for the day, though, from the open, we closed down another $3.16. That's after the gap. So this is a pretty big down day for SPY, for Qs, basically for all the indices. The other thing to note is VIX actually poked its head up today and it held. So we're at a 16. We've been in the low 13s. I think we even hit sub 13. I think we hit 12s at some point. So we're starting to see a higher VIX here. We're also just barely starting to see puts versus calls tick up. Now, this is inversely correlated, so the higher the value, the more bearish. Overall, what do I think about tomorrow? So tomorrow, personally, I'm kind of expecting a little bit of a pullback. Tuesday, Wednesday, low of the week or high of the week will typically be established. So, if I'm looking at this from Monday's perspective, do I think we've made our high of the week, or do I think we've made our low of the week? That's a tough one. We've consolidated last Friday. We did have kind of a pullback, but we closed a little bit up. Monday, we certainly consolidated. Tuesday, we definitely consolidated. And then here by the end of today, we broke down quite a lot. We drug down the monthly TWAP. Of course, we just started it. Weekly TWAP, obviously, we've come down. So I'm expecting a little bit of a retracement, and how much of it, I really couldn't tell you. Tomorrow is August 3rd, and that is when the Bank of England, 7 a.m. Eastern, announces their interest rate information, and I think the estimate is a 0.25% increase. So, futures market could be volatile or not. We had some tech earnings tonight that really didn't do a whole lot, didn't seem to affect the indices a whole lot, though I know in the after hours, SPY and Qs did curl up some, but nothing major. So with all this bear tick that we had, I'm leaning more towards the fact that we made our low of the week, just given the fact that while we had bull tick on Monday, we didn't really establish any new highs from last week as far as I recall. Yeah, I think almost 460. So I don't know. This could be the high, and then maybe the low hasn't been made yet. Boy, that would be fun for the Bears anyways. So if we're going to continue downside, last month's TWAP is 448, so that could be a target. 442 if we head down that far. 50% of this range here on the monthly TWAP is actually that third band here for this month's TWAP. So that'd be 445. And then, gosh, I mean, we've got, I really want to look at those. We've got quite a few down there. And then from a weekly standpoint, and this is kind of the other reason I'm considering that perhaps we've made our low this week, is that we've busted through all of the lower TWAP bands and then closed darn near right on it. So I'm definitely expecting a little bit more upside going into tomorrow, but anything can happen. The overall picture from the ad standpoint, which is another part of my thesis, is while we started here at the lows and we did make a new low a day, the New York Stock Exchange actually made a new high on the day at the end. We broke through a 1700 decline scenario here, broke up through that, and we almost touched the very high end of the bear zone at 1500. We just couldn't quite make it. So the volume, on the other hand, was pretty atrocious. We were basically bear mode all day. That's some of the lowest bearish volume on the Vold that I think I've seen for a while. So July 17th, we saw something like this. July 7th, we saw something like this. Yeah, I guess June we saw this, but it's pretty rare. And look at all these bull days here on the Vold. So I guess stay tuned. But yeah, I'm gonna lean towards a little bit of upside tomorrow. It'll be very interesting. But overall, crushed it today. Had a pretty nice day. I had one comment from somebody on Twitter asking about my thesis intraday, so that was pretty cool. Really appreciate the question. I don't know if they watched the channel or not, but if you were listening, it was really cool to have somebody ask something and kind of engage in a little bit of discussion. So appreciate that, and hopefully I'm helping people with these indicators and with this analysis. Feel free to comment at any point or ask any questions. I'll do my best to address them as I see them. So yeah, heading into tomorrow, we're just going to watch this VIX here and see what we can do with the weekly and monthly TiWAP values. Other than that, I don't have much else for you. Just keep an eye out for the news tomorrow. And as always, thank you for watching and happy trading.